Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, I have a special friend that's joining us today. She was the first person to ever have me on her podcast, so I'm just returning the favor. Without her, I wouldn't made friends with a certain gentleman named Steve D. Sims. We lost him a little while ago to cancer. One of the best men I've ever known, best husband and best father I've ever known. And if it wasn't for Steve, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And if it wasn't for Tammy, I wouldn't know Steve and her amazing and his amazing son. So, welcome, Tammy. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's really great to talk to you again online. It's been a minute. I was your first podcast. You were like my third guest ever back in the day when I was doing Touch Base Tuesday.
Yep, and I love the starving dog. That was amazing. But my first question, right out of the gate, is what is your definition of resiliency?
Now it's definitely changed over the years. When back in the day, I thought resilient was showing no emotion and being tough and just pushing through and being miserable, but keeping it to yourself. And now I've definitely learned true resilience is learning how to deal and taking the steps to heal. Being vulnerable, and diving into that stuff. It's a lot harder to actually deal with pain and emotion and vulnerability than it is just to be numb. And so that definition has definitely changed for me as I've grown in my own healing process.
Yep, and you also have a book coming out in January, which we're going to talk about, and that's going to help the healing process also. So give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where'd you come from, where'd you grow up, and how did you get into this crazy world? I shouldn't say crazy world, but it is an interesting world of mental health.
It is. Well, I'm Tammy Girl, and shout out to Steve Sims for that. He's the one that coined that term. I hated it when he started using it because he couldn't say Tamara with that British accent of his that saved his life. Steve really just changed my life. Him and his wife and his son were amazing to me. I helped me with so many ways, and they didn't have to. So what had happened was a friend of mine had me listen to Bluefishing on an audio recording when I was driving from Phoenix to LA. I was actually going to do an event for Les Brown at that point. And she had been listening to Steve Sims for a while and said, this is somebody who your personalities are very much the same. You can get to anybody. Like, this is somebody who has figured out how to monetize the exact same things that you know how to do. And she suggested, my podcast was like 15 minutes old at that point, really. And she suggested I bring him on. And I said, somebody like this is never going to come on a 2-day-old podcast. That's because I'd had a lot of people tell me no already because I didn't have enough downloads. All the things when you start out. And people not realizing it's about the content, not the downloads, right? And she said, oh, no, he's a self-proclaimed podcast whore, so I think you should reach out to him. I did, and he came on. And it's funny, he preferenced our first meeting with, hey, I got 15 minutes, right? And we ended up being live for like an hour and a half and just had the best time. We laughed, and it was instant friendship from that point forward. We just clicked. He said it was one of the best podcasts he'd been on, in that it wasn't structured. We just were talking and having a good time and, and learning together. So definitely huge loss to our community and to myself, as a friend. And I know to you with losing Steve, but that's where all the blue hair and all the craziness came from. But where I originally came from a small town in Pennsylvania. I lost my mom to suicide when I was 9 years old. I was a teen cutter, and I was raised in the era where I was also Catholic. So I was told my mom was in hell. And so my journey with mental health really began at a young age of being told psychology was a pseudoscience, only weak-minded people, did such things. And for some reason, I just knew in my heart that there was more to mental health than the story I was getting from the church and the people around me. Because if I'd have gone just by the way I was raised, I would have had those same types of thoughts, right, on mental health, that you're just weak-minded, it's a pseudoscience, only evil people do that to themselves. And I just never believed that. And so, in early adulthood, I started taking psychology classes in college and just really seeking out to figure out why my mother, did what she did, and having to deal with the fact, with my own mental health issues, right? I was also in the military, so it's not a good place to figure out when you're a teen cutter and you're bipolar, any of that stuff, right? And so it just kind of developed until it got to the point where, I just decided I wanted to start getting not only my story out there, but shining some light for people who might come from those limiting beliefs or be around people who have that, that stigma of mental health, especially with our fellow veterans. Back when I was in the military, you had to sneak out in town and pay cash, right, to have a mental health provider who could never hit your military record. And I'm glad to see that's changing, but we're still losing way too many people. And I think this message is more important now than even 10 years ago, because with the development of social media, in my opinion, while in the history of the world has never so many people been accessible, I will also submit that we have never been so unempathetic and disconnected as we are now. People don't have conversations anymore, right? We're sending a happy birthday Facebook message. We're not calling people, we're texting people. I can't remember the last time somebody just dialed my phone, right, and talked to me with a voice call versus sending a text or something like that. And so, there's a huge reason why the mental health is on a huge decline worldwide right now. And I think more people need to be having these conversations and making sure that we teach people how to connect again with actual conversation. And empathy. It's really easy to say horrible things about people you don't know, right, on social media when they're having struggles with mental health, and encouraging them to do things that they shouldn't be doing.
No, and that's one thing I loved about Steve. Steve was a master communicator, and that was one thing that he taught me about sending notes, sending thank you cards, handwritten, not computer generated or whatever they call it, or just picking up he would say pick up the telly, pick up the phone and just say, hey, how are you doing? Just thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. And I think that people have become unsocial on social media.
Oh, 100%. And I got to tell you, I'm so grateful for Steve just being Steve, because going back and listening to and watching the funny videos he sent me, or the voice memos he sent me, like little things like, quit effing around and do this or whatever, or just checking in, just means so much now that he's gone, that I can go back and hear that voice and get those reminders of that relationship that we had. And I think back to, like, my mother passed away in a time where I've never heard her voice. I couldn't tell you what she sounds like, right? And even if someone is gone, be able to go back and hear that voice and hear that emotion, I think, keeps you connected for sure. And I think more people should make that part of their natural thing to do, just because you don't think of things like that. He's gone, but I had years of worth of things I could, go back on and remember him fondly through.
Yeah, me too. And like the day he passed, I bought both of his audio books just to hear his voice. Just to hear his voice, one more time. So, let's get back to talking about mental health and suicide. I believe that suicide is generational. Mental health issues are generational. What are your thoughts?
Oh, 100%. Especially the way you deal with it. That's the big reason why I'm speaking the way that I do. My family members are not happy that I speak publicly about something that was considered shameful and quiet. And mental health is passed down, right? I am bipolar. I have a child that is as well, right? And if you guys don't have healthy coping mechanisms, like, I can't change the fact that I'm bipolar, but I can certainly change how I deal with it, how I relate to people, and my understanding and my responsibility to deal with that in a healthy way, right? That is a big responsibility. It's not swallow a pill or don't swallow a pill, right? I know there's things that I need to do, which include working out and keeping my environment clean. I have a rule, a trifecta. So my rules for whether it's a human being, a podcast, a TV show, book, I don't care what it is, if it does not uplift me spiritually, teach me a new skill, or make me laugh, I don't deal with it. It's not in my life. It's got to be healthy. And it is a lot of, dealing with your mental health is a lot of hard work, and it can get very draining. But the consequences of not doing that hard work, can destroy a career, can destroy relationships, or cause harm in your own life, right? I know a few years ago, I don't know if you know Brian Bogert, but
Yep.
he was a huge, huge help to me. I was on a down road spiral with my mental health. And this was before anybody publicly knew I was bipolar. And I finally had told him, and he's like, holy shit, dude, and because of him and him talking me through, like, hey, you've got to deal with this and you got to be open about it. I went inpatient and it absolutely saved my life in that moment. And I'm really grateful to him to be able to have that conversation. So having people, Brian and I don't talk every day sort of thing, right? But he is somebody that I can be vulnerable with and has helped me through hard times. And I think having that is really important. Now, our friends are not our counselors, right? He is not a shrink. Your friends are not your shrinks. You can't be dumping on people all the time. And so you have to find those healthy ways to deal with your mental health, whether it's talk therapy. For me, exercise is a huge thing, controlling my diet, my environment. Like, I've learned things to do, and it's hard work to figure that out. And I know there's not every counselor's for every human being. And I find it funny that people will go get 3 or 4 quotes to get their car repaired, but they'll stop trying counseling after the first counselor they don't like, right? And so just, also getting that message out there that, it's hard work, but it's worth it, and it will affect generational, right? I don't even have grandchildren yet. My thought process is, what can I do to have better relationships so that my grandchildren don't have the struggles that my children had because their mother was mentally ill and didn't take care of it. And then the struggles I had because my mother was mentally ill and didn't take care of it and ended her own life because of it, so.
I got to give a big shout out, guys. If you don't know Brian Bogert, you need to find him. He's got an amazing podcast. Just check him out. He's a friend of the show. He's been on a couple of times. Love you, Brian. Love you and your bride. You're truly amazing. But you took a step back.
I did.
And it's okay to take a step back when you're struggling. It's okay to take time out for yourself to heal. And I just did a thread about that today, that, getting help takes strength. Saying I need help takes strength. Going to therapy takes strength. So it's okay to step back and reevaluate yourself and get healthy. So talk about, because I just said I haven't seen you in a minute. It's been a while. So, but you did step back for your own mental health. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I stepped back from social media for my mental health, and kind of being out there, especially because, before I was working with some pretty high profile people, right? And the last thing I needed was my spiral to affect those sorts of people that I have good relationships with. And while I took a step back from social media, people think you disappear because of that. I didn't take a step back necessarily from life. I still have clients. I'm still booking podcasts. I'm still the hashtag queen. Right. I just wasn't doing it publicly anymore. Just so because I needed that connection with humans. And that meant for me a little less on social media, a little less of trying to, be out there and present in a picture perfect way. Now, I know there are people, and they're very brave, who, share the hard times and really those struggles. That wasn't something that I felt fit me and who I am, and just being online and complaining, right? And so what I did in the background to work through that and dump that in is I wrote this book that'll be coming out, and it's called Satan's Games, right? And it's about losing my mom and dealing with the church as being told my mother was in hell and all that. And so that was a very vulnerable, very hard process. A lot of ugly crying moments and a lot of hard days. And that was just something I needed to go through with my very close knit behind the scenes type people. As much as I have been out there in the past, because I've had to. I am still very much a very behind the scenes type of person. Like I loved working behind the scenes for Les Brown. I did a lot of stuff behind the scenes for Steve, right? With his hashtags and working with him on things and getting him booked and Chris Noggle and folks like that. And so for me, I have to balance the behind the scenes where I'm the most comfortable and can uplift people with what am I doing publicly, And so, now I'm so very slowly coming back into being more visible online. But I also do think it's a little bit sad that people think because you're not online, you're invisible, right? Like I have very few people, I think it's you and Brian and Steve before he passed, actually reached out to me and said, hey, are you okay? Or, hey, I've noticed you haven't been online, right? You got 5,000 so-called friends on Facebook and 4 of them actually go, hey, haven't seen you in a while, right? And understanding that there's a huge difference between what people are doing on social media and how they're living their life behind the scenes. You shouldn't assume that they're invisible because you're not seeing them on social media all the time.
And it's something I want to talk about because it's something just happened to me on Monday or Sunday. Facebook deleted all my profiles, all my groups, and it felt like everything I built for 15 years was gone.
Yeah, it's hard. They did that to me about, I think 4 or 5 years ago. Was Starving Your Dog went viral. We had gotten too many views and too many impressions and too many people requesting to be parts of the groups and stuff. And they did the same thing. They just completely erased it. It almost felt like you had been murdered, right? Like it was definitely a huge hit to the psyche and that panic of, how will people get to me? But I think that's a huge lesson, as we talked about earlier before we went live. And you need to be on multiple platforms, but more importantly, you need to have relationships and hopefully create an impact that can be carried off of Facebook, right?
Like that day we went to New York City to go see Wicked on Broadway with my daughter and my wife, and I'm like, you know what? This is the real stuff.
Yep.
It's okay to have friends, or followers, but this is the real deal. Mm-hmm. And it kind of brought me back to square one and be like, okay, I know who I am, and I got to get back to my basics. And I think sometimes we have to go back to square one. Sometimes you got to start over again, right?
Absolutely, and get back to just living life. So part of my mental, when I went inpatient, you don't have cell phones or anything, right? But I will tell you that 30 days with no cell phone was probably the best and most connected and refreshed as a human being I had felt in a very, very long time. Like it was just way less stressful. You weren't constantly looking for notifications. You weren't constantly checking, is somebody checking on me? I really got to spend time with myself and work on writing my book and just figuring out who I was, but more importantly, where it was I was trying to head, in a healthy way for me. I think more people need to take some time, and even if it's just for an hour, put your damn phone away and connect with somebody. Even take your dog to the park, something, right? Just do something where you don't have a screen, in your hand, and it really will help your mental health a ton. Trust me, and it shouldn't be the first thing you grab in the morning. I don't even charge my cell phone in my room at night anymore. I had to go get an old-fashioned alarm clock and do things just so you start your day, in a connected way, right? I think the filter of the screens that we use has just disconnected us from everything.
Yeah, and then I realized that I'm using it as a dopamine hit. Every time I would open up social media, it was for the dopamine. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, this can't be healthy if I'm just going for the dopamine hit.
No, it's a drug nobody considers a drug because it's common or popular, but it's just as destructive and can be for certain people. Some people can handle it fine, some people can't. But when you're constantly looking for that validation in that way from people who aren't truly invested in who you are as a human, it isn't healthy.
Okay, so now you have a book coming out in January that we talked
Mhm.
about. Um, I know when I wrote my first book, it was painful. I had to rip open a bunch of scabs. I had to heal.
Yep.
I actually had to ask people, did this really happen? Because I was too drunk or too high. I don't remember. So, but then I had a lot of people be like, don't mention me in the book. Don't write about me in the book. And I'm like, but it's my experience. This is
Right.
from my point of view. This is what I felt. This is what happened to me. So talk about the experience of writing this book.
It was the same thing. It was going back and for the first time publicly, even writing down or dealing with, the nightmares I had had for years, or really the trouble, like things I didn't realize I had done to protect myself, that weren't really protecting myself. And the biggest one for me was, to me, the word mom was a negative thing, right? My mom left her kids, and it was negative in the fact that she left. She was then erased. I never saw a picture of her again. We didn't speak her name in my household, right? Catholic Church said she was in hell, right? Like this was a bad negative thing. And it carried over to when I had my own children, that I taught them to call me by my first name, Tamara, under the guise of, if we're lost in public, if you're yelling mom, everybody's going to turn around. You need to know my name is Tamara, and that's how you refer to me in public. Not realizing it really was just a wound of that negative connotation of what a mother meant to me, because of what she had chose to do, back then. And so really having to also acknowledge the damage I caused my own children and the healing that they now have to go through, because I didn't go through that mental health journey when they were younger, right? And they had to witness a lot of that craziness where I was unstable. It was really hard to have to take responsibility for that and realize, that there was just a lot of mistakes I made, and there's some things I could never make up for. But if I could help other people not make those mistakes, maybe then, I won't continue to pass down the generational mental health issue that my family has had for forever.
So how do you take care of your mental health today compared to the way you used to take care of your mental health?
Well, first of all, I acknowledge the fact that I am bipolar and I have PTSD. I used to think it was crazy because, they diagnosed me with PTSD because of what happened with my mother and the things I went through. And I had this attitude of, well, I'm a veteran. I was never in a war, right? I had this connotation of, right, I wasn't shooting people. People were shooting at me. And so I didn't understand what I had gone through at that young age was extremely traumatic, and how my brain reacted to it is the definition of PTSD, right? And acknowledging that yes, I am bipolar, so there's certain foods I can't deal with. If I don't exercise, I will implode after a while. I do have to take those social media breaks and be authentic with myself. And okay, I need to get back to counseling, or maybe it's inpatient time again, right? And just being honest about where I'm at, and not putting band-aids over things, and not pretending I'm fine when I'm not.
But a lot of people, like when you hear the word PTSD, first thing people think of is war,
That's what I used to
or
think.
but it can be somebody taking their life. It can be going through a messy divorce. It could be somebody, attacking you. It doesn't have to be a war to have post traumatic stress. It's just something that happened to you that you're having trouble dealing with. But I also believe that there's post traumatic stress, and then there's post traumatic growth. Like when I had a talk with Mr. Ed Milet, and Ed said, Rich, nothing has ever happened to you. It has all happened for you, and everything is a
100%.
teachable moment.
Yes,
So,
it is.
talk about post traumatic growth.
Post, it really, I love Ed. I had the opportunity to work with him several years ago when he was on a tour with Chris Noggle. Just very humble, not a very one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. I think the post traumatic growth is understanding that there are certain traumas you are going to have to acknowledge and work through and figure out how there's no such, I forget the speaker, and I'm apologize now, but talk about there's no such thing as a good memory or a bad memory, right? It is how we have programmed ourselves to react to that memory. And so even though something's traumatic doesn't mean that that memory needs to continue to make you spiral or, cause destructive behaviors like it did in the past, right? And so part of writing this book for me was dealing with these memories and not drinking alcohol or not cutting myself or, not getting into that spiral, and instead, being proud of myself of what I've gone through and looking at it from the lens of God put me through this. How do I leverage this to help other people versus, how do I let this bury me, which is what I was doing in the past, right? Like, if there truly is, and if you believe in the good Lord above, truly a reason why you go through everything you go through, the reason isn't for you to be destroyed, right? The reason is, how do I take this knowledge and help someone else, God cares about, to better navigate that situation. And so I guess that's what that growth part means. That doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean shoving it down. It means acknowledging it, respecting it, and how am I going to deal with this going forward?
I love it. So now this is a teaching podcast. So if somebody out there is struggling with post-traumatic stress or depression, anxiety, because they're all bedfellows, depression, anxiety, PTSD, they're all hanging around with each other. So what would be your top 3 pieces of advice if somebody's looking to get help for struggling with these things?
First and foremost, besides reaching out, finding a counselor that works for you, a lot of people look at mental health issues as Tammi girl needs counseling or Richard needs counseling. It's 100% environmental issue. How are the people around us aware of our situation reacting to us? It may mean your parent or your spouse or your friend need to go through some sort of counseling as well on how to have a healthy relationship with you. It sadly may mean removing yourself from some people for some time until they can learn to respond to you in a different way. It isn't just, we tend to put all the burden of mental health on the individual who's struggling and not realizing it's a 1,000% environmental issue, right? Everything touches it. And so the way other people are reacting with you, it could be your work environment. You really do, I think the top thing is look at your environment. And if it's not healthy, take steps to change that environment. If that environment won't change, your change needs to be getting out of that environment.
And I love that, and I believe that mental health touches everybody. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
It touches every part of the family. It touches the workplace. It touches everywhere. But now a lot of the people that listen to the show, they're veterans, but they're also vetpreneurs. They're entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So one thing that when we first started talking is you're known as I call you the hashtag queen because you were so important in helping me with my hashtags to get me to where I'm going to be. So now with social media being everywhere, is hashtags still a thing?
Oh, absolutely, and in a much stronger way. I think a couple of years ago, Google's actually started using hashtags in a lot of their URLs and stuff, and they're using hashtags to like directory on the internet. And I have found, and I've been doing this for a few years now, so I still have hashtag clients, right? I'm just not on social media. I still have clients that I work with. So if you go into your alt text, like you put up a photo on social media, and that alt text that does that background text for the hearing impaired or things like that, the internet will read those hashtags in that alt text, and it will boost you like no other. And so that's just a little tip. So they are, yes, still very important. They're still a directory. there's still kind of like a meta tag or a data tag, right? And especially once you have your brand and your people find you, right? They're going to look for those hashtags. You can go on social media and click on hashtag Steve D. Sims, right, and go straight to his content. And so if you are aware of who you are or the audience you want to reach, then yeah, hashtags are still very, very important. They're not any less important than they were. They may work a little bit differently, but I'm telling you, do the alt text and see if things don't dramatically increase for you.
But I've had a couple of people that work in the background for Facebook. I mean, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and
I'll tell you, it doesn't matter.
Well, they used to say that, there's a lot of people that would just stuff as many hashtags as they can into it. But from my experience, I'm still a rookie at this. I've been doing this 12 years. I'm still a rookie. I found that 3 to 5 hashtags usually does the job for me. Is that still the norm, or should it be way more, or should it be less, or does it depend?
I like the trifecta. I like the 3 to 5, and I'll tell you why. So kind of the layered hashtag approach I use is to use my brand hashtag. So like, for example, I am Tammi Girl is on everything I do, no matter what. When I was doing the starving dog, and when we bring the starving dog back, put action where your hashtag is, right, is on every single thing. That is a brand identifier, right? And then use a hashtag for the type of content we are using, and then a hashtag for the type of audience you want to reach is the rule that has done me very, very, very well.
So what's going on now? You're probably going to be on a podcast tour, and thank you for letting me interview you and hanging out with you. So
thanks for bringing me back on after all these years. I was nervous, and I wanted to have somebody I knew I could have a friendship, comfortable conversation with for doing this again. Because despite, as much as I don't shut up when you know me, or when I'm out there, being public is very uncomfortable for me. So this is just a conversation with a friend. So I'm really grateful that you are my first coming back.
I love it. And now my friend Adam Duvall, he says hello. He actually has a group called Mental Health Warriors. He actually has a podcast, and I would love to get you on his podcast.
Oh, I'd love to. I think I've seen his group, the Mental Health Warriors group, pop up in my feed quite a bit. So.
Yep. So I would love to get him on his show. He's truly amazing. He's based out of the UK, so you get a different kind of group of people from like the United States and the UK. So it's pretty cool. So
it's funny. I have a huge following in Australia, and I will tell you, it is definitely a different demographic. They're a little more out there wild than they are here in the U.S. for sure.
So what do you got going on in the next 90 days? Well, the book's coming out in January. So what else you got going on now?
For the next 90 days, I'm getting ready to go more public with my podcast booking offerings and the hashtags and more importantly, teaching people. The thing I've noticed as somebody who gets people booked on podcasts, right, and they pay me to do that, is especially authors expect they'll just go on a podcast and sell some books, right? And they don't understand how you should prepare for that. What type of guest should I be? How do I leverage the content? And so I'll be out there a little bit more teaching some folks, how to best utilize, just not just getting on a podcast, right? It doesn't matter what podcast I can get you on. If you are uninteresting or don't understand how to navigate, an interview, or especially if the interviewer is dry and more rigid, and how to kind of get your personality out there, then it doesn't matter how many podcasts you go on. It's not going to boost your sales, as an entrepreneur. And so I wanted to get back out there more and teach those kind of behind the scenes things that people don't think about when they just get focused and go, I have a book or I have a product. I need to be on a podcast. There's just so much more to it than that, as you know.
And and one thing I would suggest to your people that are going to hire you is you do your job very well, but also that when you do have guests that come on my show like Steve, Steve actually shared my episode. But make sure that the people that are on the show share their episodes. This way it creates backlinks so they're able to get more people to buy their books. And people under a lot of people that come on podcasts, they don't even share their episodes, and they're leaving so much money on the table because they're not creating backlinks.
That's part of what I'm talking about, right? They think I'll just go on, and they don't understand the importance of what should I do before I'm on this podcast? What should I do after this podcast comes out? A lot of authors do that too. They'll release their book, do 2 posts about it. Here's the link. And then 6 months, a year later, you've never seen another post about this book ever again, right? Or you've never seen another share. I still occasionally will share episodes of podcasts where I had guests 4 or 5 years ago. If it's evergreen content, it is evergreen content. It is okay to reshare that, find new people, and still use that. And so that is a great lesson. And it's not because people, some folks say, "Oh, I don't want to have people on the podcast because they're not doing anything to share this, or they're not doing anything to help my audience." Well, are these people being educated? Like, we're not educating people on how to be a decent guest and how to utilize that in a way that helps the podcast you're on, and more importantly, exposes you to more people and helps the message that you're trying to spread. And I think it's coming down to lack of education, and so I'm hoping to help change that a little bit with some of the content I'll be coming out with, and opportunities for folks to come. I have a free downloadable checklist of what to do before I'm on the podcast, what do I do with these links afterwards, and actual 30, 90-day planner, for what you should do once you go on a podcast and after you come off of it. It'll help you build better relationships too, right? Podcasters, as you know, love guests who are out there wanting to share the message and bringing new people, to their message. And especially if you're still sharing that link a year or 2 years from now, right? Like that's a great relationship to nurture, and have around.
And one thing that you taught me is right before I had Steve on, I messaged you. I'm like, what should I not talk about? What should I not ask? And you told me word for word, ask him questions that nobody else has ever asked him.
Absolutely.
Do not ask him about Elton John. And I didn't ask him about Elton John, but I did ask him what it was like being a 16-year-old bricklayer while still dating your wife and being poor.
Right, and exactly.
He said that question was never asked by him, and that's why he shared it out. And I think when you're a podcast host, you need to ask questions that nobody's ever asked before, right?
Like, do some research, right? Yeah, go. So first thing before I had Steve, and this is something nobody taught me, I'm just a natural networker, right? And, before I brought Steve on my podcast, besides being nervous because, my episode, it's funny, when I brought him on, when I emailed him to come on my show, I was like, I got 3 listeners and 2 of them are my dogs, right? And he still agreed and said, we'll give quality to those 3 people. I went and watched as much of his content and his podcast interviews as I possibly could. And I just knew whatever conversation I had with him, I wanted it to look nothing like the other last 200 conversations he had. And too many people try to get in a structured, I'm going to ask these questions, I'm going to do this thing, and you're losing out on amazing normal flow conversation. You may have some questions you like to ask, right? But don't get so caught up in the asking A, B, C that you're not allowing the natural flow of the conversation to wind up to be able to have amazing conversations like you did with Steve and I was able to have with him when he came on the show. So don't be asking the same. It might be the same book, but what can you ask them that the last 200 people, haven't asked them, and leverage it in a different way, and that helps both the guest and the podcaster.
Yeah, because and he said the only reason I shared your podcast is because you asked me about Claire, and you used her name. It wasn't just. He said you actually did some research, which I thought was pretty amazing. So Tammi, how do we find? I'm sorry.
When you do have guests like Steve Sims or Les Brown or Ed Milet, right? The chances are pretty slim they're going to share your episode. They don't need to, right? They don't need to be in your sandbox, right? You're just something they're doing to get out there. And so if you have that unique conversation and you go above and beyond and you give them that experience they haven't had the other times, they're going to share it, and you won't even have to ask them to do it. And so if you have that attitude with every guest that they're never going to share this unless I give them a unique experience, I think it'll change a lot of podcasters' way they do things as well. Instead of just being angry that, well, that person came on, they didn't share the episode. Well, what type of host were you, right? Like,
yeah. And I got to say, I'm friends with everybody I've ever had on my show. I'm connected to everyone, including Chris Nogle. I love Chris, truly amazing dude.
I miss being on the road with him so much. I have to connect with him again. Those were good times. Back when I was doing tour logistics and I was backstage doing all kinds of craziness. That was fun for sure. And then COVID shut that down.
So how do we get in touch with you? How do we find you? How do we get into your ecosystem?
Well, on social media, I am Tammi Girl everywhere, on every platform known to man. And you'll see my blue hair, or my blue haired avatar is everywhere. So I'm easily reached on any social media platform under I am Tammi Girl.
I love it. And I'm so appreciative. Like I said, without you, I probably wouldn't be doing podcasts, because you made me feel so welcome and so at home on my first one that I just kept going. So I just want to say thank you for being the first person ever to interview me. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being the first person that's brought me back on after 2 years of being, behind the scenes. I appreciate you so much, my friend. And keep doing what you're doing.
I love it. And I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for you. And guys, so make sure you check her out. If you have any questions, especially about mental health, definitely reach out to Tammi. Truly heart-centered person. She's only there to take care of you. She doesn't have any ulterior motive. It's just to make sure that you make it through another day. And guys, as you know, I end every episode with, every morning we wake up, we have a choice. We can either be a victim of our past or a victor of our present and our future. And if you listen to this podcast, you're no longer a victim of your past, but you're a victor of your present and your future. And I love you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great week. Tammi, thank you so much, and have a great week. And I can't wait to see what you got coming up, because I know whenever you do anything, you put 1,000% into it.
Thank you, my friend, and we will connect soon for sure. Thank you so much.
And when that book comes out, I want to be the first person to have the autographed copy.
100%. You're going to get the first copy. We're going to get it's going to be out print here pretty soon. I'll send you a copy so you can read it, and we'll jump on another episode together if you want.
All right. Well, have a great week and take care of yourself.
Thanks, you too. Thanks. Bye.